I've been drawing full-time now for around 6 years, and it's crazy because I am still learning so much about the incredible medium that is coloured pencil in order to make my portraits as realistic as physically possible. And this piece was so challenging. I cannot even begin to tell you how challenging this piece was for me. I really pushed myself out of my comfort zone, and I feel like my sort of risk factor definitely paid off. This is actually part of a masterclass, so if you fancy giving this drawing a go yourself, then it is now live on my website and on Patreon. I take you from the line art through to the completed drawing, step by step, exactly my thought process and everything along the way. So I'm working on a piece like this, I'm always going to start off with the main focal point. So the bits that the viewer's eyes will be attracted to first, which tends to be the eyes when it comes to portrait work, and also in this case the ears, and mostly sort of like that real light sunlight effect. So on the muzzle. So we really need to be making sure that they are the factors and they are the things that we're paying the most attention to, really. But starting out with the eyes, because if you don't get the eyes correct, the anatomical sort of like correctness of the eyes, so the size and also the way they look, then the rest of the portrait won't go to plan. So really make sure that you're spending time on building up the eyes, and to draw, make sure they're super contrasted and super realistic. I have got a demonstration video exactly how I created that marbly looking eye over on a previous video on YouTube, so if you fancy giving that a watch, then it is now live. But the biggest thing that I learned, one of the biggest things I learned while working on this piece is how important it is to really make sure that you're using the right pencils for your base layers. So previously, and then when I used to draw, I would always just use the polychromos pencils because I was a bit scared of going in with the illuminants. But I have changed that now, and I've got a lot braver, and it is paying off. I only really use the luminance pencils now for my base layers. And obviously I do work on a very thick, heavy watercolour paper. It is 640 GSM and it can take a lot of layers. But one of the things that I found with the polychromos is that the paper and the pencil started to lift off after a few layers. Whereas if you really use a lot more of the luminance, it doesn't happen. And also you do get a real rich colour go down. You're still able to layer a lot of detail and colours over the top. So the thing is, obviously with colour pencil, you cannot blend it like you would with like pastels, and I never ever use like a blender or a like a solvent to blend my pencils. I really like to blend it on the paper, and I do that by using a lot of layers. So really making sure that you are going in and really effectively using your pencils. So putting your base layers to smooth out the teeth of the paper, then beginning to tone in your sort of second and third layers to give you much more of a deeper, richer contrast. And then lastly, going in with the detail. If you go in with the detail too early, then it tends to look a little bit flat and a little bit muddy. So leave the detail till last. I cannot emphasize that enough. That has been one of the biggest learning factors that I have had to contend with, because it's easy to see a reference photo and think, oh, right, we've got lots and lots of detail, and then just get fixated on that. But you need to be making sure your underlay is almost like an underpainting. And you think about it how you would an oil painting or a pastel painting. You're not going to go straight in with your details. You're going to building up your base layers first, and coloured pencil is exactly the same. So working from lights to darks, always to really make sure that we are sort of getting in those lightest areas first, and then beginning to draw in the shapes over the top. Do not add detail that is not there. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is sometimes, if we add too much detail in the wrong areas, again, it will just be super distracting for the viewer, and it will just make your portrait look quite flat. So really make sure, I mean, you'll see me adding a lot of little layers of pencil, but I'm always trying to blend them out, because I'm really aware of the main focal points of a portrait and where I need the detail to be in comparison to where I don't need the detail to be, i.e. I needed it to be around the eyes, on the face and the muzzle, on all the fur structure, but I don't need the detail to be that much on the neck, which is why I can go in quite rogue with my base layers. And I don't need to add all the detail to the collar. I don't need to add all the detail under the neck. That's why I can just go in and just use sort of like heavy base layers, as you'll see me demonstrate in a minute when I'm working on the body, I want that to be out of focus. So you can see how rough my initial base layers were, and then I'm still just like being quite rough with my layers, in order to really build up the saturation of colour, because I want there to be the saturation, but I don't want there to be an awful lot of detail. I want it to look out of focus and just like there's not that much detail. So another little tip that I've got for making sure your darks are super, super dark would be to use a dark indigo pencil from the Luminance. It is incredible. It's a really, really dark pigmented blue, and then you go over it with your black polychromos, and it just makes your darks super, super dark. And I use that a lot in this portrait. But anyway, here we are. It's finished. I have so much love for this. I really, really do. And I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. If you fancy giving this one a go yourself, as I said, it is quite challenging, but I take you step by step through the entire process, take you through my thought process, any mistakes I make along the way, and what things to avoid and advice. So if you fancy giving it a go yourself, then as I said, it's now live both on my Patreon and on my website, and hopefully I will see you very, very soon. Take care, and as always, lots of love. Bye.